I always believed that marriage was about growing together, sharing moments both big and small and finding comfort in each other's presence. For years I thought my wife felt the same way, but slowly, something changed. At first it was subtle. She started paying more attention to her appearance, but only when she was heading out. It wasn't the kind of change you notice overnight. It crept in gradually, like a slow-moving storm on the horizon. She used to be the kind of woman who would throw on a hoodie and leggings for errands or casual meetups. But now, every time she left the house, she was dressed like she was walking into a fashion shoot. Full makeup, heels, a spritz of perfume that lingered in the air long after she was gone. I told myself it was nothing. People evolve, and maybe she just wanted to feel good about herself. Maybe she had gotten bored of the usual routine. That's what I kept repeating in my head. But then I started noticing the patterns. When we spent time together at home, watching movies, having dinner, or even going out for a simple meal, there was none of that effort. She'd barely brush her hair, no makeup, old, worn-out clothes. It wasn't even about dressing up for me. I would have been happy with a little effort, a little enthusiasm. But she reserved that for the world outside. Not for me. Then came the phone calls. I'd walk into a room, and she'd lower her voice, or abruptly hang up. If I asked who she was talking to, I'd get vague answers, just a friend or work stuff. Her phone, once left casually on the counter, now never left her side. Face down. Silent notifications. I felt something gnawing at me, a deep, uncomfortable realization that I didn't want to accept. It wasn't just in my head. Something was wrong. Then, one night as she stood in front of the mirror applying mascara before heading out, I asked casually, "Where are you off to?" She barely glanced at me. "Just meeting up with some friends." I nodded, forcing a smile, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was slipping away from me, dressing up and heading into a world where I no longer belonged. And for the first time I realized I needed to stop pretending this was normal. I told myself I was overthinking, that paranoia wasn't a good look on me, but doubt is like a splinter in the mind, small, persistent, impossible to ignore. I started paying attention to the details, the kind of things most people overlook. The faint scent of cologne that wasn't mine clinging to her clothes when she got home. The way she always kept her phone angled away from me as if she was hiding something. The sudden change in her schedule. Plans made last minute. Vague explanations. An increase in girls' nights with people I had never even heard of before. And the most telling thing of all? She had stopped touching me. Intimacy had become a ghost in our relationship. No more random kisses while passing by in the kitchen. No more fingers running through my hair as we sat on the couch. No more warmth in her gaze. When I reached for her at night, she'd turn away, mumbling something about being tired. But the exhaustion was selective. She had energy to go out, to dress up, to laugh on the phone with whoever was on the other end of those whispered conversations. Then came the moment that shattered any illusion I had left. A friend of mine, someone who had no reason to lie, no reason to stir the pot, texted me one evening. "Hey man, I think I saw your wife at Romano's. She was with some guy. Looked pretty cozy." Romano's, a fancy restaurant, the kind of place we used to go for anniversaries, where she'd get dressed up, all smiles and candlelit eyes. I stared at the message, my hands tightening around the phone. I could have ignored it, could have pretended it was nothing. But I knew better. That night, when she came home, I asked, "How was girls' night?" She barely looked up from her phone. Good. That was it. No details, no attempt to make it sound convincing. Just a hollow answer tossed in my direction. I realized then that I was done playing dumb. If she thought she was being clever, she had no idea what was coming next. The moment I saw that text, something inside me snapped into place. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was clarity. Like stepping outside after being trapped in a dark room for too long and finally seeing everything as it truly was. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Confrontation would give her control, allow her to gaslight, deny, twist the narrative until somehow I'd be the villain for not trusting her. No, if she wanted to play a game, I would play it better. The first thing I did was start observing. Really observing. I took note of every time she left the house, what time she got ready, how long she took, what excuses she gave. The patterns became obvious. The girls' nights were always on weekends and always after she'd spent extra time getting ready, picking out the perfect dress, curling her hair, applying perfume. It wasn't just dressing up. It was the kind of effort someone puts in when they want to impress someone new. One night, I tested something. She had told me earlier that day she was meeting Sarah, a friend I barely knew, for dinner. So, an hour after she left, I texted her. "Hey, forgot to tell you. Sarah's husband asked me to grab something from their place tonight. Mind if I swing by and say hi?" Her response came immediately. "Oh, actually, Sarah's not feeling well. I think she's heading home early." Lie, she wasn't with Sarah. The confirmation sent a slow burn through my veins, but still, I didn't react. Instead, I did something that made my stomach churn. I checked our bank statements. There it was, plain as day. Charges at high-end restaurants, boutique wine bars, even a hotel. Places I hadn't been with her. That's when I started planning. I contacted an old friend who worked as a private investigator. He owed me a favor from years back, and I cashed it in. I gave him all the details, her schedule, her usual excuses, the locations I suspected. Then, I waited. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. Smiling at her in the mornings, asking how her day was, making small talk over dinner, all while knowing what I knew. Every time she touched her phone, every time she excused herself to the other room, I felt a fresh wave of resentment crash over me. 3 days later, my friend sent me the first batch of evidence. Pictures. There she was, sitting across from a man in a dimly lit restaurant, her face illuminated by candlelight, her hand resting on his. The way she leaned in, laughing, her body language so open, so familiar, so intimate. She looked like she was in love, but not with me. That night, as she slept next to me, her breathing even, peaceful, I stared at the ceiling, gripping my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I had proof, undeniable solid proof, but I wasn't done yet. The evidence kept pouring in, more photos, receipts, texts, and even hotel bookings. There was no denying it anymore. She had been lying to me, betraying me, and the worst part was that she thought she could get away with it. She thought I wouldn't notice. But I had seen enough. I could feel the anger bubbling inside me, but I refused to act on it. This wasn't the time for a rash confrontation. No. I needed to take control of the situation, to flip the power dynamic completely. I had to be strategic, make sure that when I finally did confront her it would hit hard. So hard that she wouldn't have the chance to make excuses or blame me. It needed to be calculated, precise, and irreversible. I started to gather the pieces together. I made a decision to play her game, but better. I wasn't going to expose her now, not while the affair was still fresh. I needed to give it time, to make her feel comfortable, thinking she was getting away with it. I wanted her to believe she was winning. After all, what could be more humiliating than exposing her at her highest point, when she thought I was completely oblivious? I set the plan in motion. The first step was to observe her behavior even more closely. I was careful to act like I always did, loving, supportive, the doting husband. I'd make her dinner, ask how her day was, all while silently collecting evidence. Every time she left, I made a note of the time, where she went, and who she was with. There were fewer signs of guilt, fewer slip-ups in her lies. She was getting bolder. But that was part of the plan. It wasn't until I started seeing the final pieces of the puzzle falling into place that I knew it was time to strike. One afternoon, she casually mentioned that she was planning another work trip. She would be gone for a few days. It was a typical excuse now, one she had used multiple times before. I smiled and nodded, acting as though it didn't faze me, but inside, I was ready to execute the next part of my plan. I called my private investigator. This time I had a very specific request. I wanted to know exactly where she was staying on this business trip, who was with her, and what exactly she was doing there. The PI went to work, tailing her every move. The first update came in a few days later. She wasn't in a conference room or at a corporate dinner. She was at a luxury resort, her affair partner in tow. They were checking into a suite under an alias. I wasn't surprised. I'd seen it all coming, but the next part of my plan was something she never expected. I booked a surprise couples trip to the very same resort, under the guise of a reconnecting getaway. The timing was perfect. She would be at the resort the same weekend. I told her that I had decided to surprise her with a romantic trip. She was ecstatic, or so it seemed. Little did she know I had already done my research. I checked into the resort a day before her work trip began. I had everything in place, every detail. I paid the front desk to charge everything to her card. The hotel knew what I was doing. The next day she arrived at the resort, expecting to find me waiting, ready to rekindle our relationship. But instead she walked into a scene she could never have anticipated. I was sitting by the pool sipping champagne. When she walked up to me, her eyes wide in shock, I saw the panic rise in her face. She didn't expect me to be there. She certainly didn't expect me to be so calm. I handed her the divorce papers. "You're dressed for the occasion," I said, my voice cold and steady. "Might as well start your new life tonight." Her face drained of color as the reality of the situation set in. Her betrayal was exposed, and I wasn't there to salvage it. I wasn't there to beg for her to come back. I wasn't the pathetic, unaware husband she thought I was. I had seen it all coming. The words came out of her mouth in a rush, a frantic attempt to regain control. She started apologizing, telling me she was sorry, that it was a mistake, that I didn't understand. But I didn't care anymore. She could explain herself 1,000 times over, but it wouldn't change a thing. I had taken back control. I didn't want to hurt her. Not really. But I didn't need to. The damage was done. This was the only way to make sure she never used me again. She could cry all she wanted, but the life she had built on lies and manipulation had just crumbled at her feet, and for once I felt peace. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about ensuring that I never let someone walk all over me again. I didn't need her. I didn't need the validation. I had already started to rebuild, to move forward with my life. When I walked away, leaving her standing there in shock, I knew one thing for sure. She'd never make the mistake of underestimating me again. The hotel lobby was quiet, almost serene, but inside my chest my heart was pounding. The adrenaline was intense, but there was no fear, only a cold clarity. Watching her stumble into the hotel, her face pale and filled with disbelief. It was like everything in my life had built up to this moment. The woman who thought she had me under control, the one who had so thoroughly betrayed me, was now standing in front of me, caught in her own lies. She couldn't even meet my eyes. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but I could barely understand her words. I didn't need her excuses, her apologies, or her promises of change. I had heard it all before. Each word she said felt more like an attempt to regain some power over me, but I wasn't having it. She had thought I was weak. She had assumed I would always be the husband who forgave, who allowed her to slip away with her deceit. But I had taken control. I handed her the divorce papers. There was no dramatic speech, no yelling. I didn't have to explain anything to her. The reality was simple. She had betrayed me. She had destroyed our trust, and now she would face the consequences. She looked at the papers, her hands shaking as they fumbled through the documents, her eyes growing wider with each word she read. I knew exactly what was going through her mind. She had thought she would leave me, take her affair partner's hand, and walk into a new life. But now everything she had built with lies was crumbling faster than she could grasp. "What is this?" she finally stammered, her face a mixture of confusion and panic. I didn't respond immediately. I simply let her absorb the situation, watching her futile attempt to piece everything together. She probably never thought I'd catch her. She probably thought I was just a fool who would stay in the dark forever. This isn't what it looks like," she said, still trying to save herself. But I could hear the desperation creeping in. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said flatly, my voice steady, unwavering. "You've been lying to me, cheating on me, and you thought you could get away with it. I'm done." She opened her mouth, probably ready to beg for forgiveness, to tell me it was all a mistake. But I wasn't interested in hearing it. She had crossed a line, and there was no going back. As she stood there, the reality of the situation settling in, I felt something I didn't expect. A profound sense of relief. I wasn't angry anymore. The rage had faded the moment I knew I was in control. What was left was just the cold satisfaction of knowing that she was no longer the one dictating the narrative. She started to cry, but I couldn't find it in myself to feel sympathy. Maybe it would have been different if she had shown remorse earlier, if she had ever cared about what we built together. But she didn't. She only cared about herself. "I don't want this to end like this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But it already has," I said, turning away from her, knowing that there was nothing more to say. As I walked toward the exit, I could feel her eyes on me. But I didn't turn back. I didn't need to. I had already made my peace with this. It was over. The drive home was surreal. It felt like I was floating in a vacuum, no longer tethered to the past. The woman I had loved, the one I thought was my partner, was now a stranger. Someone who had deceived me, used me, and made me feel less than I was. But that was all gone now. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I had reclaimed my own power. When I got home, I didn't feel anger or bitterness. I felt calm. I walked into the living room where everything still looked the same, but it wasn't. Not anymore. I took a deep breath, letting the silence settle over me. It was strange, but for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I sat on the couch, letting my mind wander to the past. I thought about the days when I believed in her, when I thought she was the one I could trust. I thought about the moments when I had overlooked the little signs of her dishonesty, the moments when I had brushed off my own instincts because I wanted to believe in the marriage. But none of that mattered now. I had learned the hard way, but I had learned. The phone rang. It was her. I knew she would try to reach out. She had already tried multiple times before, but I had blocked her number. She had no way of contacting me except through the landline, which I rarely picked up. But this time I answered. "Please don't do this," she begged. Her voice was shaky, filled with desperation. "We can work things out. We can fix this." I leaned back in the chair, feeling the weight of her words. But they didn't move me anymore. I had given her every opportunity to show me she cared, to prove that our relationship meant something to her. But she had failed. She had failed me. "Don't think there's anything left to fix," I said, my voice calm and composed. "You made your choices. You made your bed. Now you'll lie in it." She tried to continue to convince me that it wasn't as bad as it seemed, but I was done listening. I hung up before she could say anything else. It wasn't about being vindictive. It wasn't about revenge. It was about me taking back control of my life, of my future. I didn't need her. I didn't need the validation or the lies she had given me. In the weeks that followed, I started to rebuild. I focused on myself. I went out with friends, spent time doing things I had neglected for years. I traveled, explored new hobbies, and met new people. I had rediscovered who I was, and it felt good. It felt right. As for her, she tried to reach out a few more times, sending texts and emails, but I ignored every single one. Eventually, she stopped. She knew she had lost. In the end, I realized that this wasn't just about the marriage ending. It was about me finding myself again. It was about rediscovering the strength I had lost somewhere along the way. I wasn't the same person I had been before, and I would never let anyone treat me like I didn't matter again. I moved on. I was free, and that was all that mattered.